The Chicago Cubs have gone all in this year, and a recent sign of vulnerability from the Dodgers shows that maybe the Cubs could be winning it all.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, but the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page. I read all the comments. I read the good comments. I read the bad comments. I read the indifferent comments. I do get indifferent comments, like, I was bored by this show or something. I don't know. Like, move on. There's a lot of other things on the YouTubes. Hey, it is a Tuesday afternoon, in a very lovely afternoon here in the state of California. Games are going to be starting in about an hour and a half or so, including a game going on between the Cubs and the Twins, where Shota Imanaga is making his return from the injured list and giving the Chicago Cubs a little bit of pitching depth right now. And that is probably really, really welcome news for Chicago Cubs and their fans. Here's something I'll say, though. Cub fans should feel pretty good. Pretty good. And I will admit, I'm late to the Cubs bandwagon. I thought the Cubs got off to a good start, and I was not a big believer in them. I thought they were off to I thought they certainly held their own against teams like San Diego and Los Angeles. But it took me a while to sort of realize, okay, this team's for real. I was expecting another team to emerge from the quagmire of the National League Central. I was specifically expecting the Cincinnati Reds, because I thought they had really good pitching, and I thought once their offense starts to pick up, I thought they would become a playoff team, and I thought the Cubs would come back down to earth. And quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that didn't happen. But you got to give Cubs credit where the credit is due. They're sending a bunch of all-stars, including Pete Crow Armstrong, to the All-Star game this year. And Counsell and company, they look good. They look very good. And they clearly went all in this year. The Tucker deal was a deal that was for this year. And they traded away good players. They traded away multiple years of protection and team control of some players to get Tucker on their squad. And that's worked out. And the emergence of Crow Armstrong as, he's not going to win the MVP because his name is not Shohei Ohtani, but he is probably going to be an MVP finalist. And he's been a catalyst for this squad. And so when you take a look at this team, you see that they have taken advantage over some of the squads that have been underachievers. You got to give credit to the Milwaukee Brewers, too. Milwaukee, who stumbled out of the gate a bit, but they have put themselves in a position where they are a wild card team, and I think have as good a chance of any to make the postseason once again. But the Cubs, right now, here, as we're approaching mid-July, we're approaching the last weekend before the All-Star break, are tied in the loss column with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers do have the best record in the National League as of this recording. The Cubs are tied with them in the loss column, a couple back in the win column as they played a few fewer games than LA has. And as of this recording, they would be one of the teams that would avoid the wild card series. Now, whether or not that's an advantage or not, we've seen excellent teams just slapped out of the wild card series because I think that maybe they've been sitting around too long. But the fact of the matter is the Cubs can call themselves one of the elite teams in the game. They can hit, and they have some depth. And remember, folks, the Dodgers are on a little bit of a slide right now. Yes, it's the ebbs and flows of a regular season. This is not the first season that I've watched. I understand that no team goes 162-0. No team has gone even 120 wins. That every single team in baseball history is going to lose 40 some odd games unless there's a strike or a pandemic. And while I don't rule either one of those out because that's the way 2025 has been so far, the fact of the matter is this. All great teams are going to have little bumps in the road. And all terrible teams are going to have that little stretch where things start to play well for them. Well, LA has looked pretty bad. They looked pretty bad against Houston. They looked pretty bad against Milwaukee in the game on Monday. And it's probably just a hiccup. And I don't think there's a chance in, well, you know where, that the Dodgers are not going to win the American League West. That being said, some of their pitching vulnerability is coming to the forefront again. And the pitching vulnerability is not a new situation for the Dodgers. Their paper-thin pitching staff in 2023 was the main reason they got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks. You know, basically that series was over one-third of the first inning of Game 1. And last year, yes, indeed, they won the World Series. They're a tremendous team. And everyone, you know, when I'm in Los Angeles, everyone celebrated the team that was filled with great superstars, great memories, Freddie Freeman homer, the great rally. But remember, this was a team that was down 2-1 to a hungry San Diego team and had to throw a bullpen game to survive. They won the finale 2-0 on a pair of solo homers. If they didn't get those solo homers, well, if the bullpen game didn't go their way in Game 4, they would have been out of the playoffs once again in the division series, and the thought would have been, should they fire Dave Roberts? And remember, in the World Series, they were aided by the fact that Aaron Boone forgot how to manage in Game 1. Sorry if there are any Aaron Boone defenders out there, but he forgot how to manage in Game 1, and he brought in Nestor Cortez, who hadn't pitched in a month, to face Freddie Freeman instead of Tim Hill, who was a lefty specialist sitting in the bullpen reading Bazooka Joe comics, and of course Garrett Cole and Anthony Rizzo forgot to cover first base. Now, if Aaron Boone had brought in Tim Hill in Game 1 and someone remembered to cover first base in Game 5, the Yankees would have been up 3-2. If just one of those things would have happened, the Dodgers would have been up 3-2, but with a gassed pitching staff. Remember, they had to throw a bullpen game every time it came around in the rotation. They had to. It wasn't a situation like in 2018 when the Dodgers and the Red Sox played an 18-inning game and they had to use all their pitchers, including starting pitchers, and the next day they kind of had to do a coin toss. That's not what happened. They scheduled bullpen games. And everyone's saying it's not fair that the Dodgers sign all these players. Well, a lot of those players they sign are going to be MIA come the postseason. You expected Tyler Glasnow to pitch in the postseason? Sasaki? Blake Snell? Once again, the Dodgers' Achilles heel is going to be their pitching depth. Now, what does that have to do with the Cubs? I'll tell you what it has to do with the Cubs. It has to do with what the Cubs do over the next few weeks. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is like money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important and why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or your computer. Do you have to juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Open Call saves that instantly for you. Now, your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. An AI agent handles all after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. Open Phone is offering Locked On MLB listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. If you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone. No missed calls and no missed customers. When the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, it got the monkey, or more like it, the billy goat, off of their back. Now, as someone who grew up a diehard Boston Red Sox fan, I can tell you I understood that borderline out-of-body experience when you see that event that you thought would never happen in your lifetime become a reality. It became paranormal. It became spiritual. It became otherworldly. And then when the Red Sox won in 2007, it was a different kind of liberation. It was a realization that, hey, we could have years where we win the World Series and it not be a spiritual experience. It just be a fun team that wins it all. And that was another form of liberation that was pretty dang cool. Well, that's what Cub fans can experience this year. Those who went through the 2016 Game 7 with the rain and all the stuff and the Rajai Davis home run and the Ben Zobrist hit and the ground ball to Brian, it's going to be a tough play. All of that finally putting to bed everything. Now another Cubs championship would mean, hey, we could win it any year if we want. And for some people who are maybe a tad too young to remember that event that took place 9 years ago, there's a championship for them. And it takes a little bit of pressure off of the franchise again, who hasn't really been a big-time contender since making it to the NLCS in 2017. Yeah, they made the playoffs in a couple of times, including the COVID year. But since then, they've been a no-show. They've missed the playoffs barely a couple of years ago. Excuse me, I scratched my lip. This is a chance to do it. And like I said with the Detroit Tigers, anybody who is not expected to play on the Major League roster in 2025 should be eligible for a trade. You know, I take a look at some of their top prospects, and they're like the Jefferson Rojas's and the Moises Ballesteros and the Owen Caseys and the Kevin Alcantaras of the world. Not one of them are really expected to play a big part in the 2025 team, which means they should be available, which means this is a team that could win it all and could dethrone the Dodgers and take advantage of the Dodgers' major Achilles heel, which is the pitching depth. Now, it's right now almost mid-July, which means we've got about 2 or 3 weeks to go before the trade deadline. The All-Star game is going to be next week, and then after that, it's all trade deadline all the time. All those prospects that I just rattled off who are not going to be part of the 2025 roster should be available. Now, I'm not saying you give them away, and I'm not saying, trade your top prospect for a journeyman pitcher. But if you could get a package of multiple pitchers from a team and it costs you a blue chip prospect, that, quite frankly, is a very small price to pay if that's going to be the difference between a team that is a legit pennant contender and could unseat the Los Angeles Dodgers and a team that is, well, it's nice that we made the playoffs. Imanaga's back, but Jameson Taillon is on the shelf, which means that he is, if you're on the shelf in July, I'm not saying your season's over, but you shouldn't count on him. You should not count on him. You should act like it's over because we're beyond the halfway mark of the season. Justin Steele, out for the season. Now, Matthew Boyd has pitched really well. Matthew Boyd has been solid. And Cade Horton, Colin Ray have been fine. They've been good. But you would rather have them be your 4 and 5 starters. Or maybe your 5 starter and a long man or something. Or be pitching depth. Which you know you're going to need. Especially if you have someone like Cade Horton, who you don't know because he's a young pitcher. It used to be you could expect young pitchers to stay healthy. Now you're just expecting their arm to come flying off like the Black Knight and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Right now, the 2 players that I think the Cubs should be absolutely focused on are Mitch Keller and Andrew Heaney of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, there's that bizarre and I think nonsensical mindset of you don't want to make a trade within your division. Why would I care if you get the best players back? But the Pirates, who are probably going to sell everything that isn't nailed down, should ask the Cubs for their top prospects or something. And if it means getting multiple major league pitchers, that might be something the Cubs think about doing. having real major league pitchers on your squad as opposed to, well, a mediocre pitcher here or a minor league pitcher there could be the difference. You're not asking for an ace at this point. You're needing depth. You're needing depth. Now, you take a look at some of the pitchers who are certainly going to be available. Sandy Alcantara. Now, he's in a bad situation in Miami. Now, it's weird because Miami has actually been playing very well recently. They're still having a losing record, but they should be saying, hey, we're playing better. We're going to have hope for the future. But that's not how the Marlins do things because they're a Mickey Mouse organization that is stupid. And so they'll probably trade away to Sandy Alcantara. And the Cubs may think like, hey, this is a guy, he's had a couple of lousy seasons recently, to be sure, but he's also someone who not too long ago was a Cy Young Award winner, and maybe a change of scenery, a change of venue, and saying, hey, we just need a good half season from you, could go a long way. There are pitchers like Herman Vasquez of the Rockies. Again, not having a great year, but he's in purgatory. The Rockies suck, and he has to pitch in Coors Field. Maybe being liberated and waking up in the morning and saying, look at me, I'm no longer in Coors Field, could make him remember why he's a good pitcher. That's also why Luis Severino should be on their radar right now, as he's sitting there pissed that, yeah, he took the money to pitch in Sacramento, but he didn't know how lousy it was going to be. Or maybe he should have, I don't know. But, you know, the A's are certainly going to trade away everyone soon. And so why not get a pitcher? Severino is undeniably a solid pitcher. So why not get him in a good situation and see if it means that you trade away some top prospects to the A's, get Severino and Jeffrey Springs, and boom, you have a 3 and 4 starter right now ready to go for a playoff run. You know, Charlie Morton got off to as horrible a start as you possibly could for the Baltimore Orioles this year, but he's been pitching pretty well recently, and it wouldn't cost him much because he's a player on a short contract and everything like that. And this is a guy with a lot of World Series experience, including being the guy on the mound when the Astros won the World Series that we must not talk about. Seth Lugo of the Royals is probably going to be available. Michael Soraka of the Nationals, Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks, Patrick Corbin of the Rangers, Michael Lorenzo of the Royals. That's the deal that if I were the Cubs to call the Royals and say, we want Seth Lugo and Lorenzen. And if it means sacrificing one of your top prospects, so what? So what? Because all it means is a player for the future is gone, and you have two major leaguers as you're trying to, well, if we're going to paraphrase Omar in The Wire, they're going to take a shot at the king and not miss. The Cubs have a chance to go very far. And if you want to beat the Dodgers, it's head-to-head. Have a better pitching staff than them. Have more major league pitchers on your roster. Top prospects come, they also go. And yeah, if you trade away a couple of top prospects to the Royals, you get yourself Lorenzen and Lugo, and they give you the pitching depth, and those other prospects go and flourish with the Royals, well, good for them. But if it means bringing another World Series to the city of Chicago and reinvigorating that fan base and having Major League Baseball thrilled that the Cubs are in the World Series because cha-ching, that is a minuscule price to pay. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights or golf on the green or high-stakes soccer, maybe you're into tennis, FanDuel is the best way to make every game seem more exciting. You're already following the games. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I use FanDuel to check my favorite matchups, see how many strikeouts Paul Skeens or Zach Wheeler are going to get, and of course, how many home runs Aaron Judge will hit. I'm guessing he's hit 2 since I've made this recording. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like the playoffs. Whether I'm doing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride in the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Earlier today, Aaron Boone announced that Josh Chisholm is going to be moved from third base to second base. And that is one of those moves that, yes, it's a smart move. It's an unbelievably smart move to do right now. Why did it take this long? I don't know the answer to that question, and neither do you. Jazz Chisholm is a very, very good defensive second baseman. He is a mediocre to below average defensive third baseman. And one of the reasons why the Yankees have been on a slide where they had, a 7-8 game lead in the American League East, and now they're trailing the Toronto Blue Jays by 3.5 games as we're approaching the All-Star break. One of the reasons why that has happened, of many reasons, I think the main reason is they only seem to score when they hit solo homers. Yeah, there were the few exceptions. It's always solo homer, solo homer, solo homer. Also, I think that they pull their pitchers too soon and their bullpen is gassed. And the other is their bullpen has been falling apart, especially with Luke Weaver wetting the bed. And their defense sucks. I made this point the other day. I'm not saying they're the worst defensive team I've ever seen, but they're the worst playoff team, the worst defense on a playoff team I've ever seen, ever. I've never seen a team that as of this recording, there's still a playoff team in a mediocre American League where anyone who gets in has a legit shot of getting to the World Series. And this team is playing Morris Buttermaker level defense. And one of the problems is they had players out of position. Jazz Chisholm was a second baseman. He was playing third. And he was at third, so DJ LeMahieu, the late DJ LeMahieu, can play second base. Now, DJ LeMahieu has the range of a statue, and at one point he was a wonderful hitter and a great story, but he's an offensive liability and a defensive liability. So you can understand why they were going to play him. Peraza, who's also sitting on the bench, who is a good defensive player and hits like a pitcher, but he seems to be a mediocre defensive third baseman. Well, mediocre is better than bad. And one of the reasons why they are been so bad is you have a player who has bad at defense at second, you have a player who's out of position at third, and I can't help but think that adds a lot of pressure to Anthony Volpe, who has been, quite frankly, bad defensively over the last few months. And when you're flanked on either side by someone out of position and someone over the hill, well, that can't help your mindset. And the fact of the matter, Paul Goldschmidt has probably helped the team more than anything with all the balls he's scooped out of the dirt. If he didn't scoop a ball out of the dirt the other day during a double play situation with the Mets would have had a chance to sweep that series. And so moving Jazz Chisholm to the position he should be playing, second base, suddenly means second base is not a problem. Now, whether Peraza can hold his own at third, or LeMahieu can hold his own at third, or they have to pull someone from the minor leagues, or they're bringing Heimer Candelario, who they signed for $3.75 to come up. Either way, having a mediocre third baseman is better than having a below-average third baseman. And having an excellent second baseman is better than having a mediocre second baseman. So just that one move, you know you're going to have an offensive hole somewhere in your lineup as an infielder, so you might as well have it with your best players playing at the best position. Which brings up a philosophical question. Why the hell should there ever be someone playing out of position? In Major League Baseball, why should you ever find yourself in a, well, his natural position's this, but he's playing that? Maybe when you have a glut of players, or you have a veteran who won't move from their position or whatnot, the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to win a pennant, and I'm under the impression the Yankees are, having someone playing out of position is inexcusable. This should have been addressed in April. Just having a human being playing third base instead of Jazz Chisholm and have him playing at the position where he was, how many games I bet that would have saved at least 2 games. Having the right person playing at second base and someone better defensively at third than Jazz Chisholm. Jazz Chisholm made the All-Star team. He's going to be fine as a hitter. He's back at his regular position. Would that have helped them win a couple of games? Would that have given Anthony Volpe a little more confidence or not feel as tight? When you know what the problem is, solve it as soon as humanly possible. When the defense has been the main culprit of this collapse that they've had, there's still time to right the ship. They're only 3.5 games back. And Toronto, I don't know if you know this, is a pretty streaky team. They're on a massive winning streak, and they look really good right now. But they're not exactly being managed by John McGraw. They're still being managed by Schneider. And this is a team that just a few months ago looked like, well, maybe they have an outside chance at a wild card spot. They could have a crappy August. And the Yankees could easily leapfrog them back into first place. You have to solve issues. When an issue is obvious, solve it as fast as humanly possible. Boone did the right thing. I don't give Boone a lot of credit. He did the right thing and put Chisholm back where he belongs. Why that didn't happen earlier, I don't know. But we'll see. And if the Yankees have to acquire a third baseman, and if they don't, then you bring LeMahieu and Peraza, cross your fingers, and that's still better than what they had. I've had more than one person ask me why have I stopped doing the trivia question. I'll tell you why. Because I had to do a bunch of evergreen episodes because I took a long trip to Europe. And I also have been having to record some of these episodes out of order, and some had to be evergreen. So the idea of putting out a trivia question and waiting for people's responses really wasn't going to work. But I'm going to bring it back now. I'm going to do my best to bring it back now. So here's a trivia question. Who are the only 3 people to be named to a Major League All-Star team in 20 or more seasons? Now, I have to phrase it like that because there were several years where there were multiple All-Star games. So for some of these players, if they were on both All-Star, if they were named on the All-Star team for both games when there were multiple All-Star games in one season, I'm counting that as 1 year, okay? How many players? There are 3 players who over 20 different seasons, 20 or more different seasons, were named to an All-Star team. Who are they? Put the answer right down there in YouTube, and I will read who's right tomorrow. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen today. For your second listen, check out all the new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night and Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talking about the Cubs and why they need to be aggressive, and the Yankees and why they need to make a change. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.